A long time ago, in a pop culture landscape far, far removed from the current one, a little film franchise known as Star Wars revolutionized the way movies are made. But those two big yellow words haven't flown across the silver screen since 2019, and if you ask the next time we'll be in a packed theater cheering for an opening crawl briefing us on the state of galactic politics,
I am the Senate.
The answer is a definitive,
Well, I hope it doesn't take too long. I have work to do.
But don't worry, there's still plenty of new Star Wars for fans to jump into.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Between Disney Plus streaming series like The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and/or Andor, plus video games like Jedi Survivor and Star Wars Outlaws, the present and future of Star Wars now seems a lot less reliant on big screen adventures than ever before. This begs the question, does Star Wars even need movies in the year 2023? BBY?
Well, let's find out.
Don't get me wrong, when the next Star Wars movie eventually comes out, I will be there, first in line, opening night, with my Jedi cloak and lightsaber, assuming one of the theater employees doesn't confiscate it.
R2, let him have it. R2!
But all of the currently announced Star Wars movie projects are at least a couple years off, assuming they actually get made. However, since there's so much other Star Wars stuff going on, maybe that wait won't be so bad.
You're sweating. Relax. Take a deep breath.
Let's review for a sec. Here are the Star Wars films that have been announced and are somewhere in the development process.
This is where the fun begins.
First, going way back in time to Star Wars Old Republic era, possibly earlier, Indiana Jones 5 director James Mangold is helming a movie set more than 25,000 years before Luke Skywalker missed his chance to head down to Tosche Station and pick up those power converters. Next, Dave Filoni is working on a movie capping off the New Republic era. This is the story told across The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and the Book of Boba Fett, involving all of those characters and all that sweet, sweet custom Beskar. 50 New Republic credits says that they titled this one Heir to the Empire for all the Thrawn reasons. And lastly, our first confirmed sequel to the sequel trilogy, Daisy Ridley is set to return as Rey Skywalker 15 years after the Rise of Skywalker, where she'll presumably be picking up where Luke left off, rebuilding the Jedi Order. She'll have her work cut out for her, but Academy Award-winning director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy is set to direct. Will Daisy Ridley actually be 15 years older by the time this hits theaters? We will have to wait and see. Bear in mind, these are just the movies that Lucasfilm has publicly announced in recent memory. There are others in various stages of development hell that were originally announced and then for one reason or another haven't come to pass. Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron film, for example, or Taika Waititi's untitled Star Wars movie, both examples of projects that were announced by Disney/Lucasfilm, which haven't even made it into production. All of these film projects seem a very long way off, assuming they make it to the finish line. But is that even a big deal with all the new Star Wars we're getting every single year now? Does Star Wars need movies to survive?
Tell us now!
Hello there! Let's talk Star Wars. I'm Max Scoville, and joining me now are IGN's very own Joshua Yehl, Kim Horcher, and Brian Altano.
I'm clapping for myself.
All right.
That's us!
Yeah, that's us.
I didn't want to just get too excited or anything, but I mean, after all, there's not really a Star Wars movie coming out for a cool minute, you know? There's a bunch of cool stuff going on with the games and the shows and the comics, but like the movies are kind of up in the air right now, and it's sort of been like that for a minute. How do we feel about this, Joshua?
Well, episode 9 hurt me very deeply, so I'm fine that they're taking their time to maybe wait until they can get things right, and then in the meantime, we just enjoy all the cool, fun stuff like shows and games and books.
Mm-hmm. Kim?
I don't think the movies are necessarily the problem. It's more of a direction thing. Like blaming the medium of movies? Come on.
They have been a huge problem in the past, though.
The whole medium?
Yeah.
So, okay, the thing is that they've announced like 40 Star Wars movies and then canceled like 38 of them and then announced 6 more. And so it's not that we don't have movies, it's that they keep announcing titles or directors or ideas or themes or concepts and then ripping them out and then doing it all over again. That's been like 5 years now.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there was I think, The Force Awakens was very special. Like the sequel trilogy has its, it has its highs and lows, but like for the most part, like it really did reinvigorate a lot of fans, and it really got a lot of people excited about it. And then I feel like the Star Wars movies sort of wore out their welcome. Like they were trying to treat it like Marvel, and they were just kind of hitting us over the head with things. That said, like I think the shows have found like a really interesting spot, and I feel like we are getting a lot of bases covered in that department. But it does feel like there's something missing. You know, like there's something special about Star Wars movies. Star Wars has always been, movies first. That said, there have also been kind of special times in Star Wars fandom, like say the mid-90s, when there were no movies in sight, and the comics and games and books were all going completely bonkers, and it was great. And I feel like you kind of need to let things cool off and let the demand for movies to build back up again.
Yeah, I feel like a Star Wars movie needs to feel special. And when they started just, turning them into a machine quite like the Marvel machine, it kind of lost its luster. I remember we got The Last Jedi, then like 6 months later, Solo, and that just felt so wrong. Yeah. I feel like
getting Star Wars movies like every Christmas, and then we got one in May.
Yeah.
And I know the prequels like launched in May, right? Like that was actually a Star Wars thing for a while. I think the original movies too. They weren't really historically Christmas movies, but once we went from one of them around Christmas time, and then 5 or 6 months later, we're back in theaters, and it was Solo, and you're like, Solo, pretty good, And then that was. I thought it had some cool stuff in it.
It wasn't my favorite, but we were talking before about how we all felt when The Force Awakens first trailer came out.
Yes.
I cried. You cried.
I cried.
You cried.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what you did.
I had a tiny little mist.
Just
a single
humidity fogging up your glasses. But it meant so much because we had gone so long with nothing.
Yeah.
And it brought back the feelings, the joy, the hopefulness, the good parts of Star Wars in that trailer. And then we didn't feel that way again after.
There's also so much of Star Wars that banks on wonder. And I think that trailer had that. It had all of this stuff that we hadn't seen before mixed with stuff that we had. And like your first shot in that trailer is Finn taking off his helmet, right? And you're like, wait, or he stands up and you're like, that's a stormtrooper. What? So is it about him? Is he a hero? Like there was a lot of mystery and wonder there, and I love that about that. And then we got more and more and more and more and more, and it just felt more and more familiar. And I think that surprise and that mystery element was gone. And I want that back. I want that part where I'm like tearing up, but I'm also just like, what is happening here?
I mean, have you gone back and watched the trailer for The Phantom Menace, the very first one? Because it has that same like, what is any of this? And like, obviously there's, mixed reactions to that one. I've made my peace with it, but there's something like you want to have that wonder. You want it to be an alien galaxy. You want it to be far away. And it's, I guess I have sort of mixed feelings about the idea of the shows and the movies kind of crossing paths and bleeding into each other. And right now, Dave Filoni has been slowly sort of building out the post-Jedi New Republic era between, Mando, and then it's going to be tackling stuff in Ahsoka. And theoretically, that's leading up to a big movie crossover. That sounds like it's kind of be his sort of Star Wars Avengers. And I have I don't know how I feel about that. Like,
really?
Are you excited about that?
I'm super into that because I think Star Wars is such a big universe, and there are all these different kinds of stories you can tell, like the story of a bounty hunter finding a green child, and like a Jedi, essentially like a Ronin Jedi, and so you can tell all these different stories and then bring them together for like a blockbuster action movie with the budget to really do that kind of story justice. I think that sounds super exciting to me. That particular project has just like been a part of the. It feels like the big conclusion to all of the Star Wars storytelling that's been going on, like for many, many years, through the Clone Wars and Rebels, and Dave Filoni has been sort of telling this ongoing story through these different projects, and now he's finally getting to do the big climax. I think that if you're a longtime Star Wars fan, then that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's
you didn't sell Max on that. I admire your enthusiasm.
Filoni has done his homework for sure. I guess what I'm saying is that, compared to something like, the Force Awakens reveal or the Phantom Menace reveal, those are unknowns. Yeah. Those completely unfamiliar things. Whereas watching the trailer for Ahsoka, you're like, oh, I know that. These are characters we've seen before, and they're showing up in new scenarios. And obviously, there's always going to be some of that, something new and something familiar in the Star Wars space. But I'm kind of curious about things being done the other way around, where Andor, that could have gone either way, and it's, maybe some of the best Star Wars ever, period.
Yes.
And it's like, Rogue One was a phenomenal kind of little, pocket story, and the fact that they were able to do a prequel to a prequel, and there's more of that on the way. And I guess also I love that it's finite. Like we know there's one more season. We know it's going to take place over what, like 4 years, and we don't know what happens. We know what happens. We know
we know the end.
Yeah.
The middle part is important too.
Yeah, I mean to create stakes when you know where they're going, that's impressive. That's impressive storytelling.
Yeah, they die from an explosion, but I'm still invested. You know, like I know how he goes out, but I'm like, I really want to see this. I care about this guy.
Yeah. So what of the movie projects are you most excited about? Joshua, are you looking for the Filoni thing?
I am excited for that. What's the other one on the way?
Well, there's James Mangold, which is like the distant past.
Like the origin of the Jedi, essentially, and the Force.
And then there's the
Rey movie.
There's the High Republic one, and then there's a Rey one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kim, which one are you?
I was thinking I was more interested in the video games in the Jedi series.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
Those are kind of like their own movies. That's probably the most satisfying, ongoing, big thing in Star Wars for me right now.
Following someone who's basically a normal Jedi Knight.
Yeah.
Okay.
As opposed to, I'm a Skywalker or I'm a Palpatine, that kind of thing.
Yeah. In the Star Wars Jedi games, the narrative twists and the direction they've taken those games, that's something I actually wish they did in the movies. So, yeah, Star Wars Jedi Survivor is kind of my favorite recent Star Wars movie in lieu of actual Star Wars movies.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know, playing Jedi Knight back in 1997.
Yeah.
Being like, well, I sure wish we got movies like this, and I don't know. Maybe we will.
I mean, Star Wars Outlaws is at Comic-Con, and for me, like, that's the thing that, again, not a movie, it's a game, but that's the big thing that's going to hold me over until they get their stuff together for the movies, which, like, the thing is, like I said earlier, like, they've announced and then canceled or replaced or quietly pushed away. I mean, we had Patty Jenkins walked on a tarmac with an X-Wing and was like, ever since my dad was a pilot, I've always wanted to make an X-Wing movie, but I'm not going to make it. Goodbye.
Why don't we have Star Wars Top Gun? That seems like it's just pretty cut and dry. Just do it. Make that movie. Anyway, I hope they make a movie. Obviously, there's some stuff holding that up right now. But in the meantime, we got plenty of comics and shows and games and all that good stuff. And in the meantime, before all that, we got lots more Comic-Con on the way. May the Force be with you.